Subject 3. The walls were smooth, sterile, and without shadows. Lights pulsed in rhythm with the humming of alien machinery, and the scent of sterilizing chemicals was thick in the recycled air. The Syrix did not build prisons. They built laboratories, and within the coldest chamber of the darkest deck, a human girl hung suspended by metallic restraints, labeled only as Subject 3. She hadn't spoken in days. Aria Voss, 19 Earth years, colonist, daughter of botanists. She was captured during a raid on Enoch Station, dragged from her bunk mid-dream, forced into a stasis pod, and spirited away across light years to a place humans weren't supposed to know existed. Now, she was a test case, a variable. To the Syrix, humanity was an emerging curiosity, primitive but promising. Where other species submitted under stress or broke under pain, humans had a strange threshold, something the Syrix called the threshold divergence, a point where pain stopped causing damage and instead awakened something else. And Aria? She was their most stubborn anomaly. From the first day, they pierced her with neural filaments, subjected her to soundscapes designed to erode sanity, injected her veins with nanobiotic agents programmed to rewrite her genetic code. Her skin blistered, her bones cracked and healed again wrong, then right, then different. Through it all, she endured. Not because she was brave, not because she was strong, but because she refused to let them win. High above, behind one-way plexiglass, a Syrix scientist adjusted a floating holopad. Subject 3's cortical activity is increasing. Pain centers have become dormant. She's adapting again. Another Syrix, larger, adorned with ceremonial neural threads, hissed softly. This one is unpredictable. Her resistance exceeds all projections. Phase 4. The lead scientist tilted its head. No, not yet. We need to push further. In the chamber, Aria opened her eyes. They had once been green, soft forest green. Now they shimmered unnaturally, like light caught in a prism. Her pupils dilated, then refocused, not on the room, but on the minds beyond the glass. She felt them, not just watching, thinking, judging, calculating. She could hear whispers, not sound, but thought vibrations. A new sense blooming inside her skull. Words without mouths. Why isn't she breaking? Why is her body stabilizing? This shouldn't be possible. Aria smiled. Barely. A twitch of defiance. They noticed. Inside her bloodstream, the nanites, intended to subjugate, had evolved. No longer under Syrix control, they followed new programming. Hers. Repairing tissue. Reinforcing neural pathways. Forming networks. She no longer felt pain. Instead, she felt clarity. Memory. The faces of her parents. Her little brother's laughter echoing through the hydroponics lab. The silence when it was all ripped away. And beneath that silence, rage. It was quiet, patient, focused. Vital signs spiking. A Syrix technician reported. Subject 3's neurological map is outside expected parameters. She's entering a divergent state, the senior researcher said, voice almost reverent. This is it, the edge of post-human emergence. Initiate cranial interface sequence. We need to see what she sees. Cables extended from the ceiling, slithering toward her skull like metallic serpents. They punctured the skin at the base of her neck. No sedative, no warning. They expected her to scream. She didn't. She absorbed. Data flowed. Code intertwined. Something lit behind her eyes, a network blooming like fire across neurons. She wasn't just thinking. She was processing. And then, her voice. Hoarse, dry, but strong. You wanted to see what's inside me? The Syrix in the control room froze. Her voice echoed, not in the chamber, but in their heads. I saw what you did to the others, Aria whispered. I remember every scream, every broken body, every life you erased because we were inconvenient. She lifted her eyes. The green glow intensified, pulsing like reactor light. You took a human girl. The restraints melted off her limbs, liquefied by a sudden burst of thermal energy. She stepped down. Her bare feet touched the cold floor. You broke her bones. Her spine flexed unnaturally as new limbs, not organic, not synthetic, began to emerge from her back like folded blades of light. You hollowed out her mind. The lights in the facility flickered. Emergency warnings flashed across monitors. One by one, the other test chambers went dark. And now, she turned toward the glass. You woke something else. The glass exploded inward, not shattered, but disintegrated on a molecular level. Syrix researchers screamed, fled, some collapsing as their minds overloaded from mere proximity to her presence. Aria stepped through the cloud of dust, eyes glowing. Not a girl anymore. Not quite a machine. Not a god. But close enough. The awakening. She didn't walk through the corridor. She moved. The Syrix security systems had no terminology for what was happening. Their firewalls didn't detect her because her consciousness wasn't digital. It wasn't biological. It was both and neither. Aria's bare feet barely touched the floor as she glided through the biosteel hallway. With each step, the walls dimmed, flickering like they were unsure if she even existed. Inside her, something had unfolded. The nanite swarm the Syrix injected had fused with her neural tissue. But instead of controlling her, it had awakened something dormant. Something deep inside the human genome. A survival protocol encoded in ancient mitochondria. A violent birthright buried under thousands of years of civilization. You evolve or you die. The Syrix had accelerated that evolution. And now, they would pay for it. Elsewhere in the facility, panic reigned. Alarms shrieked in tones meant to shatter concentration and galvanize response. Genetic sentries, massive hulks of vat-grown muscle and bone, were released from cryopods. Their orders: neutralize Subject 3 at all costs. But when they found her standing in the central spinal corridor of the research vessel, it was they who hesitated. She turned slowly. Gone were the restraints. Gone was the fear. Her eyes were twin emerald furnaces, and etched along her skin were veins of glowing circuitry that pulsed with an eerie rhythm, like a heartbeat made of light. The first beast lunged. She didn't move. She looked. The creature's momentum died mid-air, its body crumpling inward, not as if struck, but as if reality forgot to render it. Bones folded, flesh liquefied. The second charged in rage. Aria raised one hand. With a snap of her fingers, every cell in the creature's body was reprogrammed, transformed instantly into inert ash. She exhaled. The air shimmered with static. From a distance, a high-ranking Syrix commander watched through a surveillance drone, mandibles twitching with disbelief. Impossible. She has no interface chip, no internal fusion reactor. This isn't science. One of the younger Syrix hesitated. It's the divergence theory. We pushed her beyond the line. The commander hissed. The line doesn't exist. She is the line. The commander paused. Watched the girl effortlessly dismantle the war beast they had engineered over decades. Then it whispered, she's not human anymore. Aria stood still, surrounded by the aftermath of destruction, but her thoughts were racing. Not with rage, but clarity. She could see everything. Microbes in the air, decaying heat signatures, the faint magnetic lines that hummed through the station's deck plates. Every sensor ping, every closed bulkhead, every panicked command spoken in the Syrix tongue. She heard it all. She understood it all. She wasn't bound to a single perspective anymore. She was everywhere within this ship, and the more she stretched, the less she resembled the person she had been. Her memories felt distant. Her parents' voices like echoes through fog. Her brother's laughter, barely more than data. Was this the price of survival? To ascend, did she have to forget? She looked at her hands. Not metal, not flesh. Both. Neither. She flexed her fingers, watching green latticework ripple under the skin. I'm still me, she whispered. But the voice in her head replied, Are you sure? The Syrix command center was less than a kilometer away. Aria didn't need to walk. She became light, deconstructing and flowing down the corridors like a river of green fire. Security doors parted before her, not because they opened, but because she no longer recognized barriers. Not physical, not digital, not conceptual. In seconds, She stood before them, the architects of her torment. Syrix scientists, dozens, hundreds, some armed, some paralyzed in fear, others muttering frantically in their native algorithmic tongue, broadcasting distress calls to off-world colonies. It didn't matter. She knew the layout of their networks, knew the locations of every off-site clone lab, every experiment still active, every human still imprisoned. They had turned her into a weapon. But vengeance was never her goal. Judgment was. She stepped forward. Project lead. Step out. No translation needed. Her voice entered minds directly. Telepathic. Resonant. A Syrix with golden neural threads slithered forward. His posture defiant, though his core temperature betrayed fear. Human. You were not meant to survive. I didn't, she said quietly. He bared his mandibles. You don't understand what you are. You're unstable. A failed hybrid. A contaminant. You'll collapse, either mentally or biologically. That's how divergence ends. Aria smiled. Then let me show you how I begin. She extended her hand. The Syrix tried to flee. He didn't get far. She didn't disintegrate him. She didn't melt him. She did something far worse. She showed him everything he had done, to her, to others. Every scream, every scalpel, every child. And then she mirrored it back, forcing him to feel every second compressed into a heartbeat. He fell, twitched, and then was still. Around her, the room fell silent. Not in fear, in submission. She turned her gaze toward the stars visible through the control deck's glass dome. Earth was out there, still turning, still blind, still vulnerable. And she had become the edge of a blade, sharpened not by hate, but by design. She whispered one last word into the command network. Return. And the ship began its course, back to human space. Back to where they thought she was dead. The return. The ship appeared at the edge of the Sol system like a ghost. It had no registration codes, no engine signature familiar to Earth-based scanners. Just a pulsing organic core wrapped in unfamiliar alloys and shifting gravity fields. Orbital command above Mars went on immediate alert. This is Mars Orbital Defense Net. Unidentified vessel. Respond or be fired upon. No answer. Not by comms. Not by hails. Instead, every screen across the command center lit up at once. And a voice, clear, human, and unmistakable, echoed into every channel. Don't shoot. I'm coming home. General Dalton froze, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. He hadn't heard that voice in a year. Is that Aria Voss? One of the younger officers whispered. That girl who went missing on Enoch Station? She's dead, Dalton said instinctively. That raid was never solved. No survivors. The screen flickered again. A single image replaced the noise. A girl, barefoot, standing alone in an alien chamber, her eyes burning like green stars, arms loose at her side, surrounded by smoking wreckage and melted steel. Not chained, not begging, commanding. Dalton whispered, Dear God. The Syrix ship descended slowly toward Mars Base Alpha. Aria guided it like a thought. She didn't need a helm. The ship was an extension of her will, grown from Syrix biomass, reshaped at the molecular level. It answered only to her. In the landing bay, Marines waited in powered armor. Rail rifles aimed. Drones hovered with high-frequency disruptors. Medical crews stood behind sealed doors, unsure if they were preparing for a rescue or a containment breach. The ramp hissed open, and she stepped out. She was taller now, by half an inch, maybe, but something about her presence made her seem towering. Her skin was no longer pale, but iridescent, shifting between flesh tone and circuitry with each step. Her hair was black but streaked with lines of glowing code. And her eyes, they had forgotten how to be soft. Weapons locked on instinctively. She said nothing. She walked forward. A single drone scanned her. Failed. Scanned again. Glitched. The operator stammered. Genome is human. Mostly. But there's some kind of overlay. An active adaptive biofield. She's rewriting herself even now. Hold your fire. Dalton barked as he pushed through the line of soldiers and approached her. His uniform was unbuttoned at the collar, his boots unlaced. He hadn't had time to prepare. She stopped 6 feet away. He met her eyes. "Aria." She gave the faintest nod. "What the hell happened to you?" Her voice was steady, emotionless. "They experimented on me. They tore me open, rewired me, tried to turn me into a weapon." He studied her. "And did they?" "No," she said, and her voice dropped just slightly. "They turned me into something worse." Dalton gestured behind him. "We can get you to the medical deck. Intel. Psych. Hell. Even a debriefing if you're up for it." "No time," she interrupted. She lifted her hand and opened it. A holographic projection flickered into the air. It showed Syrix research logs, images, data, human captives still alive, other colonies where children were taken, genetic harvest facilities spread across fringe systems. The air in the bay went cold. "Jesus," one of the officers whispered. "There's hundreds of them." "No," Aria said. "Thousands. Some of them like me. Some worse. All forgotten." Dalton clenched his jaw. "We had no idea." "I did," Aria replied. "Every scream, every death, every splice. I carry them now." He looked at her, really looked. There was no emotion in her face, but the pain was there underneath, bound up in wires and willpower. "You came back to warn us," he said softly. "No." Her eyes narrowed. "I came back to arm you." Later that day, the United Earth Defense Coalition held a high-security summit in orbit. Aria stood in the center of a circular chamber filled with generals, politicians, and scientists. She let them ask questions. She let them panic. She let them doubt. Then she showed them, one by one, what she could do. With a gesture, she disabled a military satellite, then reactivated it with better encryption. She linked to 3 AI systems simultaneously without touching a console. She rewrote a virus in 10 seconds, created a cure in 5. At the end, she looked at them and said, "I'm not your enemy, but if you hesitate, you will lose this war before it begins." One scientist whispered, "You're not human anymore, are you?" Aria turned to her. "No," she admitted, "but I remember what it felt like. And that's enough." Back in her private chamber aboard the Earth Fleet flagship, she sat in silence. Her reflection stared back from the obsidian wall panel, shifting, strange, alien. But behind her own eyes, she felt them, the voices of the dead, the memories, the rage. She didn't return as a girl. She didn't even return as a soldier. She returned as a reckoning. And the galaxy had just begun to realize it. Judgment protocol. The Syrix high mind didn't plead. It calculated. It adapted. It strategized. But for the first time in 10,000 galactic cycles, it hesitated. Above its capital moonworld, 12 war hives activated their full defense grids. Star Eaters and quantum slicers spun in orbit, each capable of tearing fleets apart. But they weren't preparing for a fleet. They were preparing for her. Aria stood at the edge of the fleet's central command bridge. Behind her, 20 Earth vessels, armed to the teeth, shields humming, fusion cores on edge. In front of her, Syrix space, a place of nightmares, a place where she had died. This was not a rescue mission. This was judgment. "Ma'am," said General Dalton, approaching cautiously, "are you sure about this?" Aria didn't look at him. "I'm not here to negotiate, General," she said flatly. "I'm here to end it." He swallowed. "Your body is the key. If you breach their network, if you go that deep again, you might not come back." Aria finally turned. "I'm not supposed to." Inside her ship, grown from Syrix biomass but rewritten with her own neural signature, she interfaced directly. No console, no chair, no wires, just will. The vessel screamed through subspace like a blade across silk, diving into the core of Syrix territory. The human fleet followed at distance, invisible to scanners behind her. They didn't need to engage. They just needed to watch. She breached their firewall in milliseconds. Syrix war minds surged to repel her. Shifting AI constructs made of thought knives and anti-memory fields, but she unwove them like paper. Their code was familiar. It had once been inside her, now was part of her. Every lab, every chamber, every command center that once tortured human children, she saw them all at once. 100 systems, 10,000 victims still breathing. Some experimented on. Some turned into half-living machines. Her blood turned cold, and then she gave the command. Begin Judgment Protocol. Across Syrix worlds, their infrastructure turned against them. Power nodes overloaded. Internal security systems rerouted. Doors meant to imprison now open to captive humans. Ships exploded mid-launch. Research data deleted itself in recursive loops. The Syrix screamed in confusion. No longer apex predators, but prey to an intelligence they couldn't comprehend. Aria appeared to them in projections, a ghost of their own making. "You call me a subject," she said to one facility director before his core ignited. "You made me your weapon," she whispered into the mind of a Syrix general before his mind imploded. "You wanted a monster," she said across the Syrix central communication grid, "and now you've got one." In orbit above the final Syrix stronghold, Aria descended. She didn't bring an army. She didn't need one. As she stepped onto the obsidian landing platform, Syrix defenders formed a line. One of them, a commander class with 10 neural arms and plated skin, stepped forward. "You are corrupted," it rasped. "You are abomination." Aria blinked once. "And you are extinct." She raised her hand. From her palm, a pulse emerged. Not energy, not force. It was truth. Encoded memories of every atrocity the Syrix had committed, transmitted instantly into the minds of every Syrix within range. They dropped to their knees, choking on screams. They had never known guilt. Now they felt all of it. The Syrix high mind, buried deep in the planet's core, initiated a last failsafe, a planetary detonation sequence, a final act of spite. Aria felt the countdown begin. She descended through layers of matter, walking through quantum-locked gates like they were mist. At the core, she found it, a swirling mass of neural tissue encased in a crystal of pure thought energy. It looked at her, not with eyes, but with remorse. "We feared you," the high mind said. "You should have," Aria replied. "You are not human anymore." "No," she whispered. "I'm what happens when you hurt one." She reached out and touched the core. Above, the moon didn't explode. It unfolded, disassembling itself on a molecular level. Every atom converted into energy and returned to the stars. No fire, no debris, only silence. The Earth fleet watched as the entire Syrix homeworld blinked out of existence. Dalton stared at the screen, breathless. "What did she do?" someone asked. Dalton didn't answer for a long time. Finally, he said, "She ended a species without rage, without war, just consequence." Aria stood in the empty void where the planet had once been. Inside her, the voices were finally quiet. The children, the pain, the broken fragments of her past. All were still there, but they were at peace. She hadn't avenged them. She had freed them. As the Earth fleet began its slow return, a transmission pulsed across every human channel. "My name was Aria Voss. They tried to break me. They turned me into something I wasn't. But I chose what I became, and I chose to protect the species that dared to survive." Then the signal cut, and the ship she rode disappeared into deep space. Not fleeing, not lost, just waiting for the next species arrogant enough to mistake human for helpless.